The difference between a $500 project and a $10,000 project starts with one question. And most designers ask it way too late. And by then, they've already wasted hours thinking about the wrong project. Hey there, I'm Mark Decote, and this is the fourth and final video in this series on 50 questions to ask before taking on any new design project. If you've watched the first 3 videos, you've learned how to understand your client's business, their audience, and their design preferences. Today, we're addressing the part that makes many designers nervous. This is about budget, timeline, logistics, and all the practical elements that make a project work. It's not glamorous, it's not creative, but it's absolutely essential. Because a beautiful design process means nothing if you don't have the business details locked down. So let's start with the question I mentioned, the one that determines everything about how you approach the project. Question number 36. Do you have a budget for this project? Ask this question early. Ask it before you've spent an hour talking to the client and coming up with amazing ideas in your head. And here's why. Your ideas are going to be completely different depending on the budget. If a client tells you they have a $500 budget, you're thinking about the project in a certain way. You're thinking about efficiency. You're thinking about what can you deliver for that amount. But if they tell you they have a $10,000 budget, your mind immediately goes to a completely different place. You're thinking more about concepts, more refinement, more possibilities. Now, I get it. Clients don't always want to talk about budget. It feels uncomfortable, but you have to let them know that it's going to affect everything. It's going to affect the bid you give them. It's going to affect how much time you spend on the project. It's going to affect what you design and how refined it is. Be honest about it. Say something like, I want to make sure I design something that fits your actual budget. So let's talk about that up front. What are you looking to spend on this project? And if they push back and say they don't know, you can help them figure it out. But you need some number to work with. Even a range is better than nothing. So ask about budget. Now, question 37 is how many design concepts would you like to see? Now, this is where scope gets defined. And scope directly impacts your pricing. If a client says, I want to see 3 different logo designs and I want to pick my favorite, that's very different from, I want you to design one logo and refine it based on my feedback. In the first scenario, you're creating 3 completely different concepts. That's more work, which means more money. In the second scenario, you're creating one direction and iterating on it. And that's different work, different pricing. Now, here's the thing. Sometimes a client will say they want 3 concepts up front, but as soon as they see the first one, they'll fall in love with it and say that's the one they want to go with. Now, that's great for them, but they still have to pay you for all 3 concepts because you did the work. So make sure they understand this up front. If they want multiple concepts, they're paying for multiple concepts, even if they only end up using one. Now, question 38 is what material will you be providing me for this project? Sometimes client will come to you and say, we have all the photos we want to use. We have the logo files, we have our brand guidelines, and that's great. And other times they'll say, we don't really have anything prepared. Can you just grab the logo off our website? And of course, that's a problem we all know because grabbing a logo off the website usually gives you a low resolution JPEG. And that's not usable for most design work. So you need to ask, what are they actually providing? Do they have vector files for their logo? Do they have high-resolution photos? Do they have brand guidelines you need to follow? And here's just a side note, a pro tip for you. If this is a local branch of, say, a national company, sometimes it's way easier to go above their head and contact the main branch, the corporate headquarters, and ask them for what you need. I've done this many times before. I'll look up the corporate website, find the information for contacting the marketing department, and reach out to them directly and say, hi, I'm working with your location in whatever city, and I'm doing a design project for them. Can you send me a vector version of the logo or any other marketing material? And usually within a couple of minutes, I have everything I need. The person at corporate knows exactly what files are available and can send them to you immediately. And this saves a ton of time and frustration. Now, question 39, are there any deadlines associated with this design project? And are they firm deadlines or flexible? And this is important because what sounds like a deadline may not actually be one. A client might say, we need this by the end of the month. But what does that actually mean? Do they need it by the end of the month because that's when they want to use it? Or do they need it earlier than that because they have to send it somewhere or distribute it or get it printed? So you have to follow up. You have to ask, when do you actually need this? Is this a firm deadline or is it something flexible? Sometimes a client will say, we need it by the end of the month, but really there's no reason for them to have it by the end of the month. So if you run into a jam and it ends up being pushed back a few days, is it really going to hurt the client? Or do they have a fixed date they absolutely need it for? I had a client who needed brochures for an event on the 30th of the month, and I calculated the print time and was working back from that date. But then when I asked them more questions, it turned out that they needed the brochures a full week before that because they actually had to ship them. The event was not a local event. They were actually holding an event somewhere else. So the deadline actually was not the 30th for me to get them the finished pieces. I had to have them to them for the 23rd. And if I hadn't asked, I would have been scrambling at the last minute to get that project done. Now, question 40, who will be my primary contact person on this project? Now, don't assume that the person you're talking to is going to be your contact person throughout the project. Sometimes the person who calls you and gets the quote is only the initial contact person. After that, you might be dealing with somebody else, maybe a different manager, maybe a completely different department. I always like to establish this up front. I say, I want to make sure we have a clear communication. Who should I be sending all updates and approvals to? Who's my one main contact? And I stipulate that all communication goes through that one person. If someone else tries to send me information or feedback, I let them know they need to go through the primary contact first. This prevents chaos. It prevents conflicting feedback from different people, and it keeps things organized. Now, question number 41 is who is involved in the approval process? This is related to the primary contact, but it's a little bit different. Your point of contact may be able to make decisions independently, or they may have to run everything past a board of directors. They may need committee approval. They might need a sign-off form from multiple people. You need to know this because it affects your timeline and your approach. If it's just one person making decisions, great, things move quickly. But if it's a board or a committee, things might move more slowly. But more importantly, I often ask to present directly to that board. Presentations matter. I can explain my design thinking in a way that the contact person might not be able to. I can answer questions directly. I can sell the design more effectively than having someone else explain it to the board. So if I know a board is involved, I might ask, would it be possible for me to come present to the board? And most of the time, clients are actually impressed by that. It shows you care. It shows you're professional. Now, question 42, are there any third parties involved with this design project? Now, this is important. Are they hiring a photographer? Are they working with a specific printer? Are they using a particular production company? You want to know who these people are because you may need to communicate with them. You may need to understand their limitations or their requirements. For example, if you're designing a sign to go on the outside of a building, you want to talk to the sign company. They might have requirements about margins, about safe zones, about color limitations for their production process. If you're designing artwork for a t-shirt, you want to know what's the maximum size they can print? What materials do they use? Are they using heat transfers, dye sublimation, or screen printing? Are there any color restrictions? By understanding the third parties involved, you can design with those constraints in mind from the beginning. You don't have to redesign it later because you didn't account for something. Now, question 43, who will be dealing with these third parties? Okay, so now you know there's a photographer involved, but who communicates with the photographer? Does the client handle that directly and just give you the photos when they're done? Or do you get to talk with the photographer and direct the shoot to have the photos that you want for your design? Does the printer only deal with the client, Or do you work directly with the printer? Who coordinates everything? This matters because it affects how much control you have over the project. It also affects your pricing as it adds more responsibility. Now, question 44, what services are you expecting from me? Here's where you define what's included in your fee and what's not. If they're asking you to design a brochure with photography, do they expect you to hire a photographer? Do they expect you to source stock photos? Or do they already have photos? If you're sourcing stock photography, are they expecting budget images at $2 or $3 each? Or are they willing to spend more for premium, high-end stock images? If it's going to be printed, do they expect you to handle all the printing logistics? Do they expect you to get quotes from printers? Do you arrange everything? By the way, I'll be doing a video in the future about print brokering and how it's a great source of additional income, so keep an eye out for it. Now, all of these details matter because they change what you're charging. Make sure your client knows exactly what services are included in your quote. Now, question 45, what do you expect from me regarding this design project? This is slightly different from the previous question. This is about the ongoing relationship and your involvement. Do they expect you to meet with them regularly? How often? Do they want weekly updates? Do they want you to present to their team or their board? If it's a print project, do they expect you to deliver the materials to their office, or are they picking everything up? Do they expect you to purchase font licenses if you're using specific typefaces? All of this goes into what you charge and how you structure your time. Now, question 46, what materials do you require from me at the completion of the design project? Now, this is the final deliverable question, and it's important to nail down. Do they just want the final PDF files? Or do they need the layered Photoshop files so they can edit it later? If so, it may cost them a lot more, and you need to know that up front. If it's a logo, do they need it in multiple formats, JPEG, PNGs, EPSs, SVGs? And do they want everything shared with them online via Dropbox or OneDrive? Or do they want a flash drive or an actual hard drive? Do they need a style guide to show how to use the implemented logo correctly? Get specific about this, because I'll provide the files can mean a very different thing to different people. Now, as you begin to wrap things up, here are a few final questions you always want to ask them. Question 47, is there anything I asked you about today that you need help with? Perhaps one of your questions prompted them to realize they don't have, let's say, a color palette or a brand style guide. Well, that's something that you can help them with. That's another project, and it's more revenue for you. Now, question 48, is there anything else you would like to discuss that we haven't already covered? After going through all of these questions, ask this one at the end. Most of the time, if you've been thorough, they'll say no. But sometimes they'll think of something you haven't covered. Follow up with this question. Question 49. Are there any other design projects I can help you with? Don't assume they only need what they came to you for. If they're hiring you to design a website, they may also need business cards, a logo, a brand guide. Let them know what else you offer. And finally, after you've gone through all of this and built their confidence in your process, ask them one more question and ask it with conviction. Question 50. When do you want to get started on this? Now ask this like you know they're going to hire you. Ask it with confidence. Don't make it a question like you're unsure if they're going to hire you. Make it a statement. Frame it as if it's already been decided. So, when do you want to start on this? Most of the time, if you've impressed them with your process, they won't hesitate, and they'll hire you on the spot if they haven't already. Now, those are the 50 questions you should ask before every design project. But I have one bonus one you should ask every client, no matter how big or small the project is. And that bonus question is, do you know anyone else who might need my design services? Yes, ask for referrals. The best business comes from referrals. So that's 50 questions, or 51, across 4 videos. We've gone from understanding the business, to understanding the audience, to understanding the design direction, to understanding all the logistics. You now have a complete framework for taking on design projects like a true design professional. Not just someone who can design, but someone who understands strategy, who asks the right questions, who eliminates guesswork, and who positions themselves as the expert in the room. And this is how you charge more. This is how you prevent revision rounds. This is how you build client relationships that last. Now, if you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel. Every week, I talk about the business side of design, the stuff that actually makes your business work. Now, I've put together a downloadable PDF with all 50 questions organized by category. You can get it by clicking the link in the description. And you can use that PDF as a reference during client calls or print it out and bring it to your client meetings, any way you think it'll be useful. Now, everything we've covered in these 4 videos is the foundation of how I approach every single project. And it's why I've built a sustainable design business over the years. As I said in the first video, you don't need to ask all 50 questions. But the more you ask, the better prepared you'll be for the project. So start using these questions. Start asking your clients about their business, their audience, their goals, their preferences, and their constraints. And watch what happens to your projects. Watch what happens to your client relationships. And watch what happens to your pricing. So that's it. Thanks for watching. Until next time, stay creative.